Wish you were here at the Etowah Depot Museum to learn how a small southern town and a large railroad company grew up together.
Thank you so much for joining us today. We have two phenomenal authors that are joining us to talk about their amazing books. My name is Allison Quintanilla Platzmeyer, and it's my pleasure to introduce Johnnie Bernhard. She's a former teacher and journalist. Johnnie Bernhard is passionate about reading and writing. Her works have appeared in the following publications: University of Michigan Graduate Studies Publications, Heart of Ann Arbor Magazine, Houston Style Magazine, World Oil Magazine, The Suburban Reporter of Houston, and many more. A Good Girl was shortlisted in the 2015 William Faulkner William Wisdom Writing Competition, as well as featured novel for panel discussion at the 2017 Mississippi and Louisiana Book Festivals. The novel was shortlisted in the 2017 Kindle Book Award for Literary Fiction, a nominee for the 2018 Penn Robert W. Bingham Prize, shortlisted by the Mississippi Institute of Arts and Letters Fiction of the Year Award, and placed in the permanent collection of the Texas State Library and Archive Commission, Texas Center for the Book. Johnnie's second novel, How We Came to Be, in 2018, was a finalist in the 2017 Faulkner Wisdom Competition, named a must-read by Southern Writers Magazine. The novel was featured for panel discussion for the 2018 Louisiana Book Festival and Mississippi Book Festival. It was shortlisted by the Mississippi Institute of Arts and Letters for 2019 Fiction of the Year, as well as the recipient of the Summerly Book Prize, HM, by the Center for History and Culture at Lamar University. Her third novel, Sisters of the Undertow, which we'll be discussing today, was chosen for discussion at the 2020 National AWP Conference, the Pat Conroy Literary Center of South Carolina, and our festival today. It's an official selection for the 2020 International Pulpwood Queens Book Club and a recommended read by Deep South Magazine and bookshop.org. It was named Best of the University Presses, 100 books by the Association of University Presses. Sisters of the Undertow is a finalist in the National Kindle Book Awards for Literary Fiction. Please welcome Johnnie.
Thank you, Allison. It's great to be here. I'm a little exhausted after hearing all that, and I certainly want the audience to know, especially I know we have a lot of writers joining us today for this panel. That takes many, many years to have all those great things happen, and that's because the generosity of readers and for people organizing large book festivals like today's.
Awesome. We are so grateful to have you. And our other author is Philip Lee Williams. He is the author of 20 published books, including 13 novels, 4 works of nonfiction, and 3 volumes of poetry. His books have been published by such presses as St. Martin's, W.W. Norton, Random House, Grove Press, Ballantine, Dell, Viking Penguin, and Mercer University Press, as well as a number of other smaller and university presses. His new novel that we'll be discussing today, Far Beyond the Gates, is available in hardback and Kindle editions on Amazon now and is his 20th published book. Philip's autobiography, It Is Written, My Life in Letters, came out in September 2014 from Mercer University Press. A new volume of poetry, The Color of All Things, 99 Love Poems, came out in March 2015. It's the winner of the Adrian Bond Award for Poetry. His most recent previous novel, Emerson's Brother, was published until this most recent one, was published in May 2012. It's about the mentally challenged brother of noted American writer Ralph Waldo Emerson. His 1,000-page novel, The Divine Comics, published in November 2011 by Mercer University Press, was a modern reimagining and updating of Dante's fabled Divine Comedy. The University of Georgia Press published his Michael Shara prize-winning novel, A Distant Flame, in April of 2011. And he had The Flower Seeker, an epic poem of William Bertram, in 2010, named Book of the Year by Books and Culture magazine. He has received the Governor's Award in the Humanities from the state of Georgia during ceremonies in Atlanta. And in June of that year, he was, for the second time, named Georgia Author of the Year, this time in the essay category in a program at Kennesaw State University. He's since been named Georgia Author of the Year twice more. His nonfiction book, In the Morning, Reflections from First Light, came out in fall of 2006, and he's a featured author in a textbook about Georgia authors for the state's 8th graders that was released in the fall of 2008. His books have been translated into Swedish, German, French, and Japanese, and have appeared in large print editions as well. A number of his books have been optioned for film by such people as producer Richard Zanuck, director Ron Howard, and actress Meg Ryan. He was hired by MGM to write the screenplay of his own book, All the Western Stars, though the movie has not yet been made. He has also published poetry in more than 40 magazines, including Poetry, Press, Karamu, the Cumberland Poetry Review, and many others. He has 2 poems in the 2020 edition of the James Dickey Review, and also published essays and short stories, and one story, An Early Snow, published in 2000, was nominated by the Chattahoochee Review for a Pushcart Prize. Welcome, Philip Lee Williams.
Thank you so much, Allison. It's a delight to be here, and thank you to all the sponsors of the festival. I've been to the festival a number of times when it was held live, not virtual, but I always love being associated with it and being associated with the wonderful town of Nashville. And it's a joy to be here, particularly with Johnnie Bernhard, who is somebody I truly admire and have gotten to be friends with. And we, as she has said, we have a lot in common as writers and maybe as human beings. And it's a joy to be here. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, thank you guys for joining. You are both so accomplished. I'm excited to let our participants hear more about your amazing books. So let's start out with Johnnie. Tell us a little bit about Sisters of the Undertow and what was your inspiration for it?
Well, Sisters of the Undertow on the surface, and we'll have fun with that title, Sisters of the Undertow, the symbolism. On the surface of the novel, it's a bit of sibling rivalry, universal theme. But the depth of it is all the characters looking for a place, looking for a home, particularly our protagonist. And in looking for a home, that's also meant as being comfortable with who we are and our place in the world. And so in the novel, we'll follow the sibling rivalry throughout childhood all the way to women are in their early 50s. Their lives take very different paths because essentially they're very different people. And we're going to play upon the connotation of lucky and unlucky, because one sister is born very healthy. All the gifts we think we can receive as human beings, beauty, intelligence, very bright young woman. The little sister is born prematurely in the 70s at 29 months. And with that, she begins life as the unlucky baby. There are many things she has to fight or overcome to be happy in this world. And I don't want to give the book away, but there's an unlikely hero here. So I think we're going to learn as readers, and what I attempted to do as a writer is explore what we see on the surface as being successful and lucky, and what's below that surface. The face that we don't often let other people see. And I'm thinking of the great poem by Langston Hughes, We Wear the Mask, you know. Going to explore animal shelters and hurricanes as places that people are sent to, animal shelters, when these pets no longer represent what people expected them to be. Sometimes what we don't expect from other people, that they could be slightly flawed, not necessarily a pedigree. I'd like to talk about that was in place in the public school system in the 70s, where children were placed in large reading groups all in one classroom and given different names based on their reading ability. Some of our listeners may remember that from the 60s and 70s. So that's where I come up with the term the Bluebirds. Of course, the Bluebirds are the gifted students. And we're going to explore the insight of what that would mean to the average learner or to a slower learner or someone with learning disabilities to be within the same classroom. And that's something that happens to the sisters in junior high. I have a lot of hurricanes in this book because, unfortunately, I feel like I've been living this book this hurricane season. But the reason why I use hurricanes is because it's always a matter of luck. No one wants to be in that cone of impact. And speaking about Delta this week, I live on the Gulf Coast. I mean, when we get the announcement that once something passes the Bay of Campeche in Mexico and is going to build up steam or strength, moving from a Cat 1 all the way to a 3 or 4, once it enters the warm waters of the Gulf, that cone of impact was from Houston, Texas to Pensacola, Florida. No one knows. Just like sometimes in life, we don't know when the undertow, when a severe impact is going to hit us, and how are we going to respond to it?
Wow, that's amazing. So relevant to what we're dealing with right now as well. So,
well, I certainly didn't think that. You know, you're always a couple of years out from writing a story. And a lot of that, though this is not autobiographical in any means, I'm from a large family from Texas, 6 kids in a family. I was very struck several years ago when I was watching the morning news, and it was a interview with a very lovely young woman married to an NFL player. And for that surface, she's beautiful. And what we consider successful in this life, she's married to a successful man. There's lots of money. Her body is perfect. However, she was talking about the grief of miscarriage and how her body had failed her. And I was just struck by the paradox that to look at her, we think she has it all. But beneath that surface, beneath in fighting that undertow that life can put us into, she couldn't produce a child. She and her husband could not get pregnant. And I was very sad about that. About the same time in my life, I know a woman that lives near a town. I'm very good friends with her. I admire her for many reasons. She had 2 beautiful, bright daughters that are professionals on a global level. And her 3rd child was born special needs, and her husband left her. And this was many, many years ago. You know, we all deal with what fate gives us in different ways. Some people shut down. Some people, that's their moment of truth. And when they realize, well, this is who I am. This is what I can handle. I know how to play these cards. And so this beautiful woman, she's retirement age now. Her special needs daughter is in her late 30s with her. I've never heard her complain about her husband leaving her, about being a single mom, a working teacher. Teachers don't make much money. And taking care of her 3 girls. And I was always amazed by just her beauty as a human being, her faith, her love for her daughter, never resentment. Again, I'm always struck by paradoxes in what I write. So these sisters are very yin-yang. One looks absolutely successful on the surface, where the other one has learned to deal with a lot from the very beginning, but lives her life in a very different way. Our protagonist is a librarian because it was librarians. When my first novel came, if it wasn't for them, I would have been lost. I know their world has changed greatly, not only with COVID, but before that, our homeless population that lives in the downtown area of many of our urban cities. The library is where they go to have a climate controlled environment, to use a toilet that flushes, to be able to wash their hands. And I had an experience with that when my first novel came out. Just like any author, you think in the beginning, oh, this is what it's going to be. But you realize after time, there should be no expectations as an author. You should be grateful for whatever comes your way. So that first reading at a large public library, it was during the winter. I came early. Librarian did her job with the cookies and the punch for the crowd, and I was going to talk about literature. And I realized looking around that the patrons of that library were homeless, and they came there for the cookies, for the lemonade and the free coffee, and to use the internet. And I was very humbled and moved by that experience, and I read to them. And that's where I got the idea to write this novel. That was in 2017. I was so moved by my expectation and what the reality actually is. So hands and blessings to our librarians for not only COVID, but providing a wonderful environment for a group of our citizens who have no place else to go.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. Like so much to unpack there, and so many themes that we'll discuss throughout the session. But I want to also talk about Philip's book. So Far Beyond the Gates. Philip, tell us a little bit about that book, what readers can expect from it, and what your inspiration was.
Okay, first of all, I want to tell Johnny that when I was a kid in school, I was not a bluebird. I think I was a parrot. Honestly, I was not a very good student, but because I was very daydreamy, and I got through. I graduated from college, and but all along, I was one of those people who sort of lived inside of my head, and sometimes that's good, sometimes it isn't. My book, Far Beyond the Gates, is about fathers and daughters. I had wanted to write a book about fathers and daughters for a long time. And in fact, this book took me, I don't know, I worked on it probably 7 or 8 years. I work on books for a very long time. My Civil War novel called A Distant Flame that won the Michael Shara Prize, I worked on for 10 years because it was imperative to get everything right. I had to learn all the history. I had to learn everything. And this is a more of an interior book. It does have drama. It does have difficult things happening, but it is largely a character-driven book about two people. Lucy McKay, who is a high school teacher in her mid-30s, who lives in Oxford, Mississippi, and her father, Pratt McKay, who is a Pulitzer Prize-winning historian who won the prize for a book on the women of the civil rights movement. So, but Pratt has a tremendous guilty conscience, and he invites Lucy up from Oxford to his gated community in the Great Smoky Mountains. He teaches at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill, but he has a house in the Great Smoky Mountains. He invites her up for the summer for two reasons. One, he wants to get things straight with her, to solve what has been between them all these years. But also, he has developed multiple sclerosis and is in pretty bad shape at this time, and so and he has people taking care of him. He's wealthy, and so he can afford that. But this gated community could not be more different from where Lucy lives in Oxford in an apartment house. but she wants to come up. And so for the summer, just to get away, and because she feels like she owes it to her sick father to hear whatever he's going to tell her. She doesn't know. She's not sure at all. Lucy is divorced. So is Pratt. Pratt is 3 times divorced and currently unmarried. And Lucy really wants to find out something, but at the same time, she wants to impress her father because she's a high school teacher. He's a Pulitzer Prize winning college professor. And she has always felt as if he puts her down because of being a high school teacher. My whole family is a family of educators. My father was a high school principal. My father, by the way, just celebrated his 98th birthday and is well and doing great. But he was a high school principal, and and my wife taught 8th grade English for 35 years, and I taught creative writing at the University of Georgia. My brother was a professor at UGA of archaeology for more than 30 years. My sister taught nursing. My mother was a kindergarten teacher. So we all have been involved in education. So the academic milieu is really important in this book. And Pratt is highly educated, highly intelligent, but in a book sense, but he is not very good with people. And he's not very good certainly with his daughter. Lucy, on the other hand, is wonderful with people, and she's good with people with the academic part, but it doesn't dominate her life as it does Pratt's. So Lucy goes to this small town, this small community in North Carolina for the summer, and she and Pratt have the tremendously difficult task of learning who the other is. And Lucy is angry. She's very angry. She's angry at her ex-husband, who was a would-be writer. He wanted to be a writer, and that's how they wound up in Oxford. But he was a failure and simply never could write anything. And Pratt is somebody who, for most of his life, was admired more than loved. And so the place they go to, the place they have to get to, is a place that is incredibly difficult in human terms. They have to get to, and more than an understanding, they have to get to a place where love is possible. And I think that is something that is so difficult for all of us to put ourselves and to learn how to live our lives so that love is possible, not only possible, but probable, and stays. And it's just very difficult to do. So there are some tremendously surprising secrets that are revealed to Lucy during this visit. She forms a relationship with a young man, and it's a book of ideas, but it's also a book of trying to get into love in a way that had seemed impossible in the past.
Wow. So that's one thing I would love to talk about, is kind of the similarities across both of your books about those family ties. I think the love being unconditional for family members is something that a lot of people take for granted. They think that it'll just automatically be a positive relationship throughout life, and that's not the reality for a lot of people. And so I'd just love to hear your thoughts on that. We can start with Philip if you want.
Well, I came the relationships in my book. I'm rather like Johnnie in this respect. Bear no relationship to my own at all. My family I have a brother and a sister. My father's still alive. My mother passed away in 2008. But we had a family that was, we didn't have much money at all. I wouldn't say we were poor, but we were because both of my parents were college graduates. They went on the GI Bill after World War II. My father was in the Army Air Forces, and my mother was in the Waves. So they both got to go to school free on the GI Bill. So they were college educated. But, you know, our house, my father majored in chemistry, my mother majored in English. So our house was split almost down the middle between science and literature. And so that fed into my life in many ways. I love science and have spent a great deal of my life studying science just for fun. And but literature and classical music were also a tremendous part of our family growing up. But finding a place where love can stay and is not taken for granted and is not assumed is difficult, even in families that are calm, that are that can get, you know, don't have a lot of money, but do care about the same things. Our love was that we all cared about the same things and loved the same things. And so having that kind of relationship is sheer luck. I was a very lucky man. I grew up in such a happy family, and we were very close. And and we had books. We were one of the few families in town that had a lot of books. I first read Leaves of Grass when I was probably 12. I was reading Emerson. My father gave me Emerson when I was maybe 13, 14 and said, read this. So I did. And I've been madly in love with Emerson and Thoreau since then. But a lot of families are simply broken. And you know the people who have come from broken families and how they act and what a struggle it is for them to do the smallest acts of love to each other and for each other. And I have seen them, I have lived with them, and I have known how difficult it is to get back to that place where happiness is possible. And so that's what this book is about. This book is not about me. It's not autobiographical. It is about understanding that there is a path in us that will lead us back to the love that we deserve, even if we maybe never had it before.
That's so beautiful. And Johnnie, you also had a question about if you were worried what your sisters would think as you created your latest novel about sisters.
Well, before I answer that, I want to say to Philip and what he was saying, he is absolutely right, and this is reflected in Sisters of the Undertow. Love should never be taken for granted or assumed it's just there because you're born into this family. You may have the same mother and father. That love just occurs. Love is hard work. I asked a friend that was going through a divorce, why are you getting a divorce? Because in marriage, we could love our husband one day and the next day we're thinking, please don't breathe around me. Don't say anything else. That's marriage. And I've been married to the same man 37 years, but that's love. It's never perfect. And I think what hurts us as human beings, especially my generation, we grew up on the Disney idea of love, that if good, kind, this prince comes into your life and it's fairy tale. And if your life isn't fairy tale, you've done something wrong. So I think now at least we're discussing today that children learn to love by watching adults love. Children learn to trust by watching adults and how adults respond to them. Now, in my novel, the sisters are born to very loving parents. It's a very good marriage. They have their down days, they have their great days, but there's always that passion. So we know that love is there. Now, hate and anger can be a passion, and love can be a passion too. It's a thin line. Love doesn't exist when there's no longer a passion, when you don't feel anything. And so for the father and the daughter, they both felt something for each other. We knew as the reader that they were going to have to work hard to find that love. In Sisters of the Undertow, the younger sister loves unconditionally. She's like a saint. She loves people. She loves her life. She has fully accepted what life has given her, and she isn't bitter. She's learned to play the cards that she was dealt. However, the sister given all the gifts that we may as, that's what you need to be successful in life. She doesn't play her cards well. She's bitter. She's angry. She doesn't trust people. She hides in books. Now I'm going to get back to that question about the sisters. Yes, I'm one of 4 sisters, and we're stair-step, and I'm the oldest sister. So in writing Sisters of the Undertow, Kim, the older sister, always feels a responsibility to her younger sister, though she doesn't want to feel it. She wants to be free. I don't want this burden. I want to live my own life. She always feels the guilt and wonders what is wrong with me. I will tell you, as the big sister, I feel responsible for my siblings, my younger sisters. In my eyes, and I'm in my late 50s, they're still my little sisters, and they always will be. That's the beautiful thing about a family. That's a mystery that we really don't have a true definition of why we feel that, why we say little sister. But no, my sisters were okay with this novel. I talked to them a lot about it as I'm writing. I'll ask their advice. I've gotten some great lines from them used within the novel. But love is a paradox. You know, you give one heart, and that's a scary thing to do. Think again, where children love to trust, learn to trust, where they learn to love. You give one heart and you hope that other person accepts it, and then you live with 2 hearts, right? But it doesn't always work out that easily. So trust and love, and I think both the characters of Pratt and Kim, very bright, very well read, living with a lot of guilt, wanting so much to be loved, but not quite sure how to do that. And that catalyst for Pratt, and of course Philip will do a much better job than me, the catalyst for the reconciliation of his own heart and his own forgiveness, because you can't really love others until you love yourself, or accept yourself, warts and all, is illness. And that's very humbling. And in my novel, the catalyst for Kim, who is walled off, aloof, doesn't want to connect to people because she doesn't want to be hurt. She's been hurt enough. That catalyst is a hurricane. She loses everything. So, you know, we could say in religion that's often called the dark night of the soul. When you're faced with yourself, who am I? Who am I to other people? What is my place in this life? And of course, the hero's journey, correct, is that the hero says, I am this person, and I'm going to play the cards that life gave me to my best ability and rise to the occasion. You know, there's a conversation in the book between the sisters, is the difference between a loser and a winner never gives up. A winner doesn't give up. It's the loser that never gave up. So, like Philip's book, we go to the inner, very psychological, very character driven. And of course, there's world events that impact the protagonist in her change of, in her reconciliation. Of course, we could use the hurricane as being the world's largest baptism and bringing her to her knees and helping her to realize this is what life is. And it's to love and to be loved. There's nothing else. Everything else is superficial.
Yeah.
Like being a bird, just like judging people on what they own.
Or a parrot.
Or a parrot. Absolutely.
Philip, you have a question. How did you get inside a woman's head to create Lucy? I loved your novel and thought you wrote from an authentic female viewpoint.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I am very, very sensitive about cultural appropriation, and I suppose a man writing in the voice of a woman could be considered that. It was very easy for me, and I'll tell you why. Most of my friends during my life have been women. Because I think women are smarter than men. I think they work harder than men or less. And I think they're more insightful than men. And I think they're more creative in general. I would be very happy for a law that banned all men from running for public office for 10 years. I think that would be, a gift we could give the future.
I love that.
But having said that, I have always had real close friends who are women, and they were close enough to where I could ask them to have real private and conversations about how do you feel if this were to happen to you? How would you react, or how would you think? Or you're sitting in your dining room and the phone rings. What do you feel? And I have over the years had thousands of conversations like that with women. I haven't much with men because men don't know what to say, but women do. And if they're good enough friends, and they know that your motives are noble, or at least good, or at least not bad, then they will tell you. So I have spoken with women friends for more than 40 years about how they feel about things, how they think about things. Plus, I have just watched and thought and listened very carefully. I'm sure Johnnie is an eavesdropper too. I mean, some of the best stuff you'll ever get in your life. You'll hear eavesdropping. I was walking on the University of Georgia campus one time, and these two guys were coming toward me, and one of them said, "Are you going home this weekend?" And the other one said, "Nah, I don't think so." And he said, "Why not?" And he said, "Well, my mom's in jail." And I thought, what? And the other guy said, "For what?" And he said, "Arson." And then they walked right past me, and I turned around and followed them. And I got the whole story.
I hear that story.
And which is way too long to go into now. But I have been one of those people in my life who has been a listener more than an active participant. I'm the guy on the edge of the crowd who is standing there listening and thinking and trying to understand, which is one reason why I really like philosophy a tremendous amount. I read a lot of philosophy, and I try to imbue the characters that I write about with complexity based on that. And believe me, I had some dark nights of the soul writing the Lucy sections of this book, wondering what people would think. But after 40 years of doing this, I felt like that I was, going to do it as well as maybe not a man could, but as well as this man could. And Lucy is a character I admire a lot. And plus, if anybody who writes a novel, whether it's a woman or a man, they're going to have to write about the opposite sex. And so you could ask the question, how do women know how to write about men? And the answer is a frog could write about men, but women are much more complex to write about, and that's why it takes a tremendous amount of study. Excuse me, I've got to there. But anyway, that's the answer to that question.
Awesome. So we're coming to the end of our time. We've got 2 more questions. So I'm going to ask each of you one and give me your 1 minute, 30-second response to it. So Philip, could you talk about your research process for your novels? Have you been surprised by what you found?
Yeah, I do a ton of research, even on a book that doesn't have necessarily any facts that have to be known. In my Civil War novel, A Distant Flame, I spent 10 years on writing and research and had thousands of pages of notes before I even started writing the book, because everything had to be right. And, it was about Southerners who are against the South's position in the Civil War. Very important book to me. There are other books that I've written about that have backgrounds in music, which I know about a lot. I'm a classically trained musician, as well as a guitar picker and songwriter. And actually, I had a big project with Bill Anderson that didn't quite come off some years ago, and was in Nashville all the time. And he and I hung out at Tootsie's Orchid Lounge and the Ryman and a lot of things. So research, yeah. The only thing about research is that writers fall in love with their research and tend to use too much of it. Killing your darlings when it comes to research is very, very hard.
Thank you so much. And Johnnie, has the current political climate and the pandemic affected your writing, or have you used it as an escape of sorts?
I've used it as an escape. And thank you for all the beautiful things you said about women, Philip. Is he not charming? True Southern gentleman. Thank you. It's all
actually, that's completely disparate. To me, that's how I see the truth of things.
Thank you. I'm working on a 4th novel. I feel like when I get to the point of saturation with the news, and this is my personality and just how I live my life, that I feel comfortable in. I could only take so much. We've all suffered tremendously, too much anxiety worldwide. I have a beautiful daughter and son-in-law and 2 grandchildren in Ireland. And we had to decide today, we had a video chat earlier, that we would not see them for Christmas. I tried every way I could think, how can I get from the Gulf Coast of Mississippi to Dublin? If I could do a direct route and I would have driven to Houston or to Atlanta, it isn't happening. It's not going to happen. And I wouldn't ask them to do that for me. I couldn't bear to think of my grandson wearing a mask for 10, 11 hours. So we have to reflect on the positive things in life now, for me. And that's writing because it's productive. I'm writing about a sexy 73-year-old woman that a man in his mid-50s falls in love with. He's been in love with her since he was 16. And this 73-year-old woman who was just buried the love of her life, her husband, she married an older man, has to decide how she wants to live. She can move into a retirement community, or she can continue to create and grow and learn. And one night, driving back on a lone road in West Texas, she sees the body of a teenage girl huddled in a ditch. And she has to decide at that moment, do I follow the law or do I follow my conscience? a human being. So I've enjoyed escaping with this novel. I work with a lot of other authors and in reading their work and trying to lift them up, because it's important during this time that we don't let the arts die, and realize that the arts, whether it's reading or listening to music or painting, all these great artists, they are the ones that bring us joy. They take us to another place when the place we're at isn't such a great place to be. So that's how I'm spending my time. Some days I get tired and I think, that's enough. Don't feel like writing. I live in a great little town where there are 300-year-old oak trees. I go for a lot of walks with my dog. I enjoy meals with my husband. I get to meet great writers who inspire me in my career. And I get to meet people like you, Allison, who volunteer your time to bring something like this to the rooms out there.
Yeah.
So go away 2020, but until then, we're going to be okay. And I cannot wait till New Year's Eve.
Yeah. Thank you so much. You have so many people speaking your praises in the chat. We're so grateful to both Johnnie and Philip for joining us for this panel. I think the participants gained a lot from it. And I think, Johnnie, you made a great point. Arts are the first thing to go in times of national crisis and funding and things like that. So this really highlights the need for art and literature to be a place for solace. You feel free to check out Johnnie and Philip's books at the Parnassus links that will be provided in the chat boxes. We thank you for joining us for the session. Thanks to our authors, and continue enjoying the Southern Festival of Books, everyone.
Goodbye, everyone.
Pleasure.
God